Aboard the Scuttlefish. Captain Roger Squinty McGillicuddy wasn't exactly the sharpest laser pistol in the galaxy. His ship, the Scuttlefish, was a rusting bucket held together with hope and duct tape. His crew? Well, they were loyal, if a bit on the dim side. "Avast me, hearties!" Squinty bellowed, squinting towards a blip on the ancient radar. His eye patch kept slipping, making depth perception a challenge at the best of times. "Prepare for plundering? Looks like a juicy merchant vessel ripe for the taking." "Oh, come on," sighed someone in the room. "He's doing the pirate voice again." The crew, consisting of One-Eyed Pete, Pegleg Johnson, and Fingers, who was missing a few, true to his name, scrambled into action with a series of clunks, grunts, and the occasional curse as they tripped over themselves. The Scuttlefish wheezed up beside the supposed merchant ship, which looked suspiciously like a giant cucumber. "Boarding party, make ready," Squinty ordered, waving his cutlass with more enthusiasm than skill. Honestly, he mostly used it as a back-scratcher. The airlock hissed open, and the pirates surged onto the cucumber ship. There was no resistance. Odd. The corridors were dark and lined with a strange pulsating membrane. "This isn't a cargo hold," Pegleg muttered, scratching his beard. "It smells kind of fishy around here." A series of gurgles and squelches echoed down the hallway. The pirates froze, their weapons trembling just a bit. Then, something monstrous slithered into view. A giant, slimy space slug with rows of razor-sharp teeth. "Infinite booty, me eye!" Squinty shrieked. "It means run for your lives, you fools!" The bumbling space pirates turned tail and ran as if the galaxy itself was chasing them. Their boots barely skimmed the squishy floor as they sprinted back towards their ship, the monstrous space slug in slimy pursuit. "Faster, you scurvy barnacles!" Squinty howled, shoving his clumsy crew toward the airlock. Just as they lunged into the Scuttlefish, a gargantuan tentacle shot out from the cucumber, wrapping around Pegleg Johnson's ankle. "Ah!" Johnson yowled. "Why did it have to be the good leg?" With a mighty heave, the space slug yanked Johnson back into the depths of its cavernous, cucumber-shaped body. Squinty winced, then slammed the airlock shut, just as the furious slug smacked its dripping tentacles against the hull. Breathing heavily, the shaken pirates watched in horror as the creature slowly devoured their comrade, his muffled screams turning into gurgles. "Set course for anything that ain't slimy," Squinty croaked, wiping a bead of sweat from his brow. "From now on, we stick to loot we can understand." The Scuttlefish limped away from the monstrous space cucumber. Inside, the crew mourned the loss of their peg-legged shipmate, and the prospect of any sort of normal treasure. No matter which corner of the galaxy they poked their noses into, the booty was always destined to be infinitely weirder than they could ever imagine. With a renewed aversion to slimy surprises, the Scuttlefish wandered the cosmic backwaters. The crew's enthusiasm was a bit bruised, their dreams of riches replaced with grim determination to avoid anything remotely squishy or cucumber-shaped. One particularly dull space afternoon, the radar chirped feebly. Squinty adjusted his eye patch and grunted. It was another blip, but this time, it looked more like a standard, non-vegetal ship. "Could it be?" he whispered, hope flickering in his one good eye. "Standard, sensible booty?" The crew approached cautiously. The vessel drifted with its lights dimmed and its engines silent. The word Ark stenciled across its side. "An Ark?" One-Eyed Pete squawked. "What in blazes would anyone want with an Ark?" "Maybe, just maybe, it's full of those gold statues from the olden days," Fingers suggested stupidly. Squinty shrugged. "I don't see how that'd help us buy rum," he mumbled. "But it couldn't hurt to have a peek." The boarding ramp lowered with rusty creaks. The pirates gingerly stepped inside, the musty air hitting them like a stale space blanket. The ark was dimly lit, and rows of stasis pods lined the walls. Sleeping people! Fingers exclaimed, eyes wide. Could be worse, Squinty admitted, scratching his chin. But ain't exactly treasure, is it? They moved deeper into the ark's depths, passing pod after pod. Suddenly, Fingers let out a startled yelp. One pod hummed insistently, and a distinctly non-human silhouette was visible through the frosted glass. What in the blazing galaxies? That ain't no person, Squinty gasped. Inside the pod, a furry, four-armed creature with luminous green eyes twitched in its frozen slumber. Well, bugger me sideways, Squinty sputtered, his jaw hanging open. An alien. Now that might fetch a pretty price on the black market. A flicker of greed sparked in the crew's eyes. Aliens were a rare sight this far out in the cosmic backwaters, and rarity often equated to a whole heap of credits. Carefully, they deactivated the pod's stasis field. The frosty glass cleared, and the furry creature slumped to the floor, slowly blinking itself awake. The alien shivered, its four eyes blinking in confusion. It let out a startled squeak, then a string of utterly incomprehensible chirps and whistles. Greetings, Squinty offered, waving his cutlass in a gesture he hoped was non-threatening. The alien stared, tilted its head, and chirped back, just as indecipherable. Fingers, Squinty barked. Didn't you say your aunt's cousin's hairdresser once dated a translator bot? Aye, Captain, Fingers squinted. I think I still have the bot's number squirreled away somewhere. He was so cool. Squinty rolled his eyes and sighed. Could you pull out the translator, please? So we can communicate with this, well, whatever it is. With fumbling excitement, Fingers dug through a pouch on his belt and produced a dented, ancient-looking device. The translator sputtered to life, its screen flickering. Avast ye landlubber! State your species and intentions! The translator crackled in a tinny voice. Squinty cringed as he complained, Fingers, you left it on the wrong settings again. Oops, Fingers blurted as his lack of digits fumbled with the settings, switching the translator from pirate plunderer to alienese. Please, kind sir or madam, state your species and intentions, the translator said in a professional alien voice. The furry alien chirped and whistled with surprising intensity. The translator hummed, then spat out, Entity identifies as Gleep Glorp of the Noobles Dominion. States it is on a mission of utmost importance and requires assistance in contacting its people. Mission? Assistance? Squinty scratched his head. I'm not sure about helping, but we could definitely deliver it somewhere. For a fee, of course. Greed and a stroke of dumb luck, it seemed even for bumbling space pirates like themselves, the infinite booty of the universe could occasionally offer up a twisted kind of treasure. A mischievous grin spread across Squinty's stubbled face. Hear that, lads? It sounds like this here, hairy little fella. It could be our ticket to a whole mess of credits. All right, Gleepy something, let's talk business. The negotiations were interesting. Using the clunky translator bot, they discovered Gleep Glorp was a high-ranking ambassador from a peaceful, technologically advanced collective. His ship had malfunctioned, sending him off course. He eventually tried hitching a ride on the Ark, where Squinty and crew found him. Now, he desperately needed to get back home to prevent a galactic misunderstanding. Exactly what kind of misunderstanding remained adorably unclear. Squinty and his crew envisioned mountains of shiny space coins. Of course, the problem with extremely valuable cargo is that it attracts attention from rival pirates, shady bounty hunters, and the occasional disgruntled tentacled space monster. The journey back to Nooble's Dominion territory promised to be anything but boring. Days turned into a chaotic blur of narrowly avoiding space patrols, outsmarting or clumsily fighting off less than reputable spacefarers eager to snatch the furry diplomat, and desperately trying to understand just what Gleep Glorp liked to eat. Apparently, fermented space algae paste. The scuttlefish's supplies were sorely lacking in that department. As they approached hostile territory, the scuttlefish's radar pinged wildly. An entire fleet of sleek, menacing Bylar battleships materialized from the inky blackness, weapons glowing ominously. Uh-oh, Squinty muttered, wiping a bead of sweat from his brow. It seems like we aren't the only ones interested in Gleepy here. Squinty gulped. Even for bumbling pirates, this situation was getting seriously out of hand. But with the prospect of a massive reward gleaming in their eyes, they weren't about to give up now. The Bylar ships hailed them, demanding the immediate surrender of the ambassador. Squinty, however, had never been the surrendering type. He jammed a thumb at the galaxy map. Gleepy friend, he addressed the chirping alien. Any backroads to your home? You know, to avoid all this? Gleepgorp whistled excitedly and pointed towards a faint cluster of stars. The translator bot buzzed. Entity suggests an alternate route, less conventional but likely to reduce unwanted encounters. Less conventional it is, Squinty roared, a wild glint in his eye. Strap in, boys, we're going off the space map. The scuttlefish swerved away from the Bylar fleet, plunging towards the uncharted star cluster. It was a desperate gamble, hurtling through unknown nebulae and narrowly dodging rogue asteroids. Yet, somehow, luck seemed to be on their side. Whether from sheer dumb chance or the furry alien's inexplicable space navigational skills, they finally emerged on the outskirts of the Nubal's Dominion. The Nubal's Dominion welcomed their lost ambassador with bewildered chirps and frantic waving of multiple limbs. The response was utterly unexpected. Once the bot translated the wild tale of the bumbling space pirates who had saved the Gleep Glorp. Instead of being arrested for attempted alien napping, Squinty and his crew were hailed as heroes. Gleep Glorp praised their bravery and sheer obliviousness, if they were being honest, while the Nubal's council rewarded them handsomely. It turns out that infinite booty doesn't always look how you might expect. The scuttlefish limped off, a bit battered, but loaded with enough credits to buy a lifetime of bad rum and shiny replacement ship parts. Squinty even sprung for a new eye patch, no longer forced to navigate the galaxy half-blind. And so, the legend of the bumbling space pirates and their infinite booty of the bizarre lived on. Proof that even in the vast, strange corners of the universe, sometimes the weirdest winds bring the biggest rewards.